I'm doing fantastic, Mr. Chair.
And I see Secretary Robinson has joined us. How you doing, Madam Secretary?
Mr. Chairman, we are live.
Okay. Chairwoman Kelly.
Good afternoon, everybody. We want to thank both committees for being here this afternoon to have a conversation with the Secretary of Labor and with her assistant and the deputy assistant regarding our constituents and Marylanders who are not as fortunate today as we are. We understand that it's a difficult time for the secretary and her staff to be here, but a number of us might even have questions about why the platform for UI claimants would be disturbed or taken down at this point in time. And I'm sure that's something they probably have heard a lot of people question and will want to speak regarding. So at this time, I'm going to suggest that we call on the secretary, unless Mr. Chairman, you want to make additional remarks first.
I just to say thank you, Madam Chair. What you said was well said. We appreciate Secretary Robinson and the department joining us today. As always, information is power. There are a lot of folks around the state that need this update. So as servants, we're proud to be here to bring it. Unfortunately, I have another commitment, so I'm going to have to leave us a little sooner than I'd like. But more than capable Vice Chair, Delegate DeMay will be taking over on behalf of the House. So if we can, Madam Secretary, welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me, Chair Davis?
Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. So good afternoon, Chair Kelly and Chair Davis and members of the committees. And thank you for this opportunity to brief you. You asked us to update you on the Lost Wages Assistance Program and the launch of our Beacon 2.0 modernized unemployment insurance platform. So we're happy to do that today. I do have Dana Freeman, my Assistant Secretary over the Division of Unemployment Insurance, as well as our Deputy Assistant Secretary, Brian Moore, available. So we should have all the right people here to answer all your questions. I'll just kick it off by giving a brief update. If we can go to, I think, the next couple slides. You can go one more, please. We'll just give you, I have even you've seen some of these statistics, but I wanted to just highlight the newest numbers, which, as you know, they always come out. Our processing comes out on Thursday mornings because that is the reporting timeline for the United States Department of Labor. We did have a slight uptick in new claims this week, a little over 13,000 new claims. But it's important to note that as of this slide says September 5th, $6.3 billion paid. As of September 12th, we have actually paid out over $6.8 billion in benefits to claimants. I know you understand how historical that is in light of this pandemic and all of the CARES Act extended benefit and regular programs that we're working with. Approximately 96% of all complete claims that have requested payment have been processed, with 4% of cases pending adjudication, which that percentage is consistent with pre-pandemic times. And I know I've heard a couple comments from legislators about claim volume having dropped since those weeks where we were getting over 100,000 new claims per week. And so why do we still have, a 4% claim rate pending adjudication? With higher volume, those numbers are higher in the buckets that are pending. I wanted to just explain a little bit about that. Those pending numbers always include the newest claim numbers that have come in from the week before. So as I know that you understand at this point, this is an insurance program. And as new claims are coming in, we will always have pending claims that need to be processed. So, we have to wait 8 days upon the filing of a new claim for a response from the employer. So in the first 8 days of a regular unemployment insurance claim, oftentimes nothing can be done until we get that response from the employer. I'm going to come back to that when we get to the launch of our new system, because we hope those timelines will be shortened because employees and employers can do more in the system, and we won't have to wait all of that time for those responses. I also wanted to mention that 11,000, 12,000, 13,000 new claims coming in per week is still extremely high volume. Back during the Great Recession, our high claim volume per week was only 6,000 claims. Our pre-pandemic claim volume was 1,800 to 2,000 claims. So even from the high volume of the Great Recession, we are still today seeing double the amount of claims that we saw then. I think it's important to note, just to put things in perspective a little bit, I also wanted to remind everyone that we have an approximate 400,000 continuing claims each week. I know we've explained kind of ad nauseum that every single claimant in our system has to file a weekly certification. They report their wages, and we certify eligibility on a weekly basis per state and federal law. That being said, claims can change, and we are monitoring and serving those 400,000 claims every single week. So when we have a week with 13,000 new claims, that adds to the continuing claim volume that our staff is working with. We have certainly staffed up and augmented our staff. We continue to do so. But I think those things are extremely important to note. And I'll end this here, but we are also implementing, as you know, the Lost Wages Assistance Program through FEMA, an agency that the Department of Labor has not worked with before. We still have ongoing CARES Act claims. We are dealing with fraud, as you may have seen some updates on our investigations on those fraud claims in a press release that went out earlier today. And so the new system is actually needed more than ever before, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. So if we can go to the next slide. The next slide, if we can get there, there we go, is just a quick, I'm only just gonna show this to your members because this is something we're really excited about. This is our Beacon mobile app. I know that some of your members had asked us for this earlier on, and we were working through the programming and testing to make sure it was right before we launched it. But it has proved to be extremely successful. So MD, unemployment for claimants, you can go to the next slides. I'm not going to read all of these user reviews to you, but this is one particular occasion where we have received a lot of positive feedback. I wanted to share that with you because if anything, when we get to talking about the launch of our new system, I will ask for your partnership in reminding our claimants that if they have not already downloaded our mobile app, we want them to do that because it provides a very simple and user-friendly way for them to file their weekly certifications. You know, claimants tell us it takes less than 5 minutes on the app, and they can do it anytime. And it also takes the load off of our website. So we hope that people will do that. And you can go past those slides right to the Lost Wages Assistance Program. Perfect. So as you know, we originally, when FEMA announced this program, talked to our IT team and our vendor. We were trying to figure out how quickly we could get this system programmed for our claimants in Maryland so they could have access to this additional funding that was being offered by the federal government. We initially thought it was going to take us through maybe late September. We were very happy to be able to launch this program, Lost Wages Assistance, which is a FEMA funded program, last Friday, September 11th, offering an additional $300 per week in retroactive benefits back to August 1st. So I want to just mention that we were the first state on the East Coast to apply for this funding. We were the 11th state overall to actually receive the Lost Wages Assistance funding. And currently we're one out of only 11 states to have been awarded all 6 weeks worth of funding. So FEMA has stated that this program ends after 6 weeks of the $300 supplement. And we're proud to be giving that to our claimants in a lump sum if they're available. I'm probably getting ahead of my slides. You can switch to the next slide, please. So to be eligible, we have done lots of communication on this through press release and direct communication with claimants and social media. So I'm sure you know this already, but to be eligible for this program, claimants must complete a one-time self-certification that they were unemployed or partially unemployed due to disruptions caused by COVID-19. That is the FEMA LWA program language. They also required that claimants be eligible, monetarily eligible, for at least $100 of unemployment compensation under any of the unemployment insurance programs that we administer. So you can move to the next slide. We did not require claimants to file any separate application for this funding. And we notified all eligible claimants. So all claimants who had that monetary eligibility for at least $100, we notified them directly by email that they were eligible, so they could be ready and had all the instructions and understood how to log into their one-stop portal like they always do and self-certify their eligibility for this program. So if you go to the next slide, I think I can show you a picture of, we showed claimants via email and on social media exactly what this self-certification would look like. I did see some responses from claimants saying, wow, you guys made this pretty simple. It's one screen. You certify that you are eligible under the requirement for the program, or you decline, stating that you were not laid off due to COVID. And you save that. And if you go to the next slide, you will see due to the nimbleness of our technology, we saw that claimants were asking some questions. How do I know if I certified? Is there a way for me to confirm that I did this correctly and that I'm going to get the payments? And so yes, we sent this communication out as well so that our claimants could go back into their portal and actually check if their certification went through. And we explained to them exactly how to do that and what they would see if they had certified. And I think if you go to the next slide, you'll see an example of what they would see if they declined. There was, we just tried to make it as simple and as clear as possible for our claimants. So if you go to the next slide, after certifying, our claimants have received and will receive, if they are still doing that certification, a lump sum payment retroactive to August 1. So for any claimant that was eligible for that $300 per week lost wages assistance funding, all the way back to August 1st, they self-certified, and within 24 to 48 hours, they received $1,800 directly loaded to their debit card. We know that happened. We've heard back from lots of claimants. We have all the bank files to show. So for example, as of Monday, September 14th, 389,921 claimants completed that self-certification with, as you can see, over 359,000 doing it through the website and over 30,000 completing that self-certification on our mobile app. And you can also see the stats of over 378,000 chose to accept the lost wages assistance, and over 11,000 claimants chose to decline those benefits or self-certified that they were not laid off due to COVID. So you can go to the next slide, and I won't read this one to you, but your members have asked us often to please make sure we're communicating it thoroughly. And I think we have done a good job of that recently. We are happy that we have the ability now to directly communicate with claimants via email. And I know I have an example a little bit later in the presentation of why we know that our communications are working so well. But you can see regarding this program alone, between press releases and emails directly to our claimants and several posts on social media and several conversations with your members and staff in the weekly calls that we're doing. We think we got the word out. And as you can see by our numbers, we believe that most of our claimants have completed this certification. If you go to the next slide, I may have missed this, so I'll just state it because it was probably in a slide and I skipped over it. But for any of our claimants who did not complete that self-certification, they don't have to worry that it ends during this downtime while we're getting ready to launch the program. They will still be able to go back in and fill out that self-certification and get the LWA payments back to August 1. So with that, I'll move into an explanation of Beacon 2.0. Your members have asked us in previous hearings, and I've been asked in interviews, what are we doing to prepare our division of unemployment insurance for the future? And how do we think we're going to be prepared if there is a future surge in COVID-19 or any other pandemic? Well, Beacon 2.0 is absolutely the answer to that question. If you flip to the next slide, please. We were originally planning to launch Beacon 2.0, or Beacon as it was originally called, this summer in June. You may remember back in April, when we were in the beginning months of the pandemic and Congress had passed the CARES Act. You may remember me talking about the fact that Maryland was fortunate that we had technology that we had been working on for many years, that we could build upon to stand up the Beacon One Stop portal quickly to implement the CARES Act programs. We had to do that very quickly, and it was using just pieces of technology that were not quite ready for full launch of our modernized system. But that's where the Beacon One Stop came from. It was the application portal that we stood up using a portion of this technology for our CARES Act programs. Beacon 2.0 is the fully modernized unemployment insurance system that is going to launch on Sunday, September 20th for employees and for claimants, and Monday the 21st it will launch for employers. It is this project dates back to 2015. It integrates all benefits, appeals, tax, and reemployment functions of the unemployment insurance system into a fully cloud-based system, so that employers and claimants can conduct nearly all unemployment insurance work online. This is going to be a state-of-the-art system. It includes the features that our claimants have been asking for through this pandemic, and we believe that the time is right. And this is what our customers need, and it's going to help our staff be able to serve our customers better as well. To give you just some examples, information will be updated in the new system by staff, claimants, and employers. It's all updated real time. It will look very similar to the Beacon One Stop. So the beauty of what happened in April is that all of our claimants have already activated their accounts. They all have usernames and passwords. None of that is going to change for them. When they go into the system Sunday to log in, they'll do it the same that they always have. The modernized system will just prepare our department to better serve our claimants and our employers. Our employers have not had this type of portal before. And like I said, it's going to help us to better handle any surge going forward. We really believe that there's never been more of a need for this type of comprehensive system, and we're really happy to be able to offer this to our customers. So you can go to the next slide. As you already know, our current system is offline as of yesterday at 5 o'clock. This is happening to transfer all the data from the 30-year-old MABS, Maryland Automated Benefits System, the legacy system, into the new Beacon portal. Due to this offline period, I know we have communicated, I hope everyone has gotten the message that no claims can be resolved. Our staff can't get into the system. We're taking this time to ensure that the data transfer happens appropriately and that we have time to go back in and test and make sure all the information is where it needs to be before we go live on Sunday. We are keeping a limited number of agents available all through the weekend to answer general inquiries. But again, they won't have access to go into the system and check specific issues or answer specific questions about claims. So we can go to the next slide. You probably also saw our communications, which were almost daily, reminding our claimants of what they needed to do to avoid any disruption or delay in their benefit payments. So we started messaging last week, and we explained to our claimants why this downtime was happening. And we asked them to please file their weekly certifications early. As you probably know, most of our claimants already file weekly certifications on Sunday and Monday, because that's the beginning of the week for them to file, but they have all the way through Saturday to do that. So with the system going offline on Wednesday evening, that they lose the time on Thursday, Friday, Saturday to be able to file those weekly certs. So we're happy. Let's see, I know I have the information. We're happy that as of 4:30 yesterday, over 399 claimants had already filed weekly certifications this week. So we believe our messaging is working. We know that there have been a lot of claimants in the system. And that being said, if for any reason a claimant is out of town or didn't get the message or goes into the system or tries to later in the week and realizes it's offline and they didn't get their weekly certification filed, no fear. We are adding an additional 6 days of a grace period to allow our claimants to file those weekly certifications next week and get paid for the previous week. So there shouldn't be any problems with anyone missing any of their payments or any payments being delayed. So we can go to the next slide. So I'm going to just share a little bit of information about the features that will be available for claimants and employers in this system. In addition to everything that they can already do in the one-stop, in Beacon 2.0, claimants will have the ability to get immediate updates regarding their claim status and information about their eligibility. So as you know, and I know your staff knows because they're taking a ton of calls from our customers, oftentimes claimants are calling because they want to know why their claim is on hold or what's going on with, what's being waited for from the employer, or just information about their status, their claim status, or their eligibility. The new system will include real-time explanations and data about what's happening. It will also allow both sides, our staff and the claimant and employer, to see the correspondence. It will allow a claimant to look at their benefit payment history, to respond to fact-finding requests, those interviews that are being scheduled. Sometimes there's information that we need, there are questions that we need answered, and sometimes claimants have to wait to either get an adjudication specialist on the phone or wait for us to call them. We're making cold calls, and we're also still scheduling interviews. Much of that can now happen automatically in the system because a claimant will have access to upload documents and answer those fact-finding requests, and our staff will have the opportunity to see those real time. Our claimants will also now, they have never had this ability before, they can track and actually pay any overpayments right in the system. They can access the reemployment services and more. So we can switch to the next slide, and I'll explain a little bit of what employers will see as well. As I mentioned earlier, employers have never had access to an account. We began messaging with employers weeks ago, actually, and we have gotten some very positive feedback from them about activating their accounts and the opportunity that they know they will now have to submit reports and update their account information and their tax rate, submit wage reports, submit adjustments, respond to to requests for separation. So as I mentioned in the beginning, when a new claim is filed and we currently have to wait 8 days to allow the employer to respond, oftentimes it takes 8 days or more. This pandemic has presented a real problem for us in terms of businesses being closed and employers, maybe not due to no fault of their own, not getting us the information they need in a timely manner. So we're trying to call and their business might be closed, so no one's answering the phone. That causes a claim to be in a pending status where we can't resolve it. This portal will allow an employer now, in addition to the claimant, to go into their portal and answer our questions and respond to those requests for separation information when one of their employees files a claim. That's huge. I think I didn't mention it on the last slide, but both sides, claimants and employers, will now have the ability to file appeals directly in the system. That's also new. And submit all that supporting documentation. Employers can also set up an agent to manage their account in the portal. And those agents, such as payroll processing companies who often manage employers' accounts, will have access to the portal as well to do some of this work for them, especially on the tax side. We also have a brand new employer call center available specific to employers. So they have their own number that they already have been calling just to get information and to receive assistance for the employer side, because obviously, as you know, the tax side of our unemployment insurance program is completely different from the claimant side. So we didn't want that to get mixed up in the same call center. You can go to the next slide. So I'm not going to read through all of this, but I do want your members to know that all of our staff is going to have access to this system. It is going to help us do our job because, as you know, we have currently been working off of two systems. The Beacon One-Stop portal was the application portal and the processing portal for CARES Act claims. But our regular UI program, all the processing and benefits and all of the payments was happening through our MABS legacy system. So this Beacon 2.0 eliminates the need altogether for our legacy system. We are moving to a brand new fully cloud-based system, and all unemployment insurance staff will have access to this system and the ability to see all information from all angles of this program in one place. That is really important. I know we've received some concerns when some of our call agents take a call from a claimant and they might say, well, I can't see this information in the system. I'm going to have to escalate this. Or they're looking at one system and getting one answer, but they may not be seeing the up-to-date information from the Beacon One Stop or vice versa. That has been a problem because we're working in two systems. It has obviously also been a problem because we are hiring lots of new staff and training them sometimes in new programs that we are just learning ourselves. So for a lot of different reasons, this system is necessary, and it's going to help both claimants, employers, and our own staff do a better job. So if you want to go to the next slide, I won't read this to you as well, but again, since we've received so many questions from legislators about our communication plans, we did want to make sure everyone understood that we had different phases for this launch with entire communication plans set for each phase. So we can go to the next slide and talk about our pre-launch communications. Just some examples of what was happening. Call center staff were reminding claimants, every claimant that called, about the offline period. Early in September, I mentioned all of our employers were sent account activation instructions. We had press releases. The website language was updated, mass direct emails to over 680 claimants and 82,000 employers. So lots of social media posts, fact sheets provided to you. And again, we have continued those reminders by direct email and social media just to ensure that the message was getting out. Everyone went in to file their weekly certification early, and everyone just kind of had that peace of mind to understand and know what was happening and why. And hopefully hear that some of the features they've been asking us for during this pandemic are coming. We are planning to make those available to them on Sunday. And we have a whole nother plan for communications to make sure that we can walk them through how to use those once we launch. So you can go to the next slide. This is the graph I was referring to earlier when I wanted to just kind of give an example of why we know our communications are working. So for example, we sent over 600,000 claimants a email on last Sunday. And this is the example of the spike that you could see in claimants filing their weekly certifications ahead of schedule. So when we have learned, and the vendor has confirmed, that within seconds of us sending our direct emails to claimants, they can actually see the statistics of the high volume in the system. So that's good because we know our communications are effective. To that end, we have ensured, double and triple ensured, that we have added servers available, that we have the capacity that we need to handle that volume. And what we have now that we did not have before is the mobile app, which allows claimants to do a lot of this when at their convenience on their phone. So we'll go to the next slide and talk a little bit about their offline period. I mentioned the emails and social media posts have gone out for each of these phases. We've also added additional, I think at the end of our presentation, I share with you the list of tutorials and videos we have created. We created a lot of those in the beginning of the pandemic to help claimants understand how to use the Beacon One Stop. We've now created new tutorials, videos, information for our claimants and our employers to help them and walk them through the instructions and directions and just guidance of how to use some of the new features of the system. So you can go to the next slide. Next week, we are having extended call center hours. Post launch on Sunday, September 20th. We always have 4 hours of call center hours on Sundays. Our team is working 7 days a week since March, but on this Sunday, we're not going to have our 4 hours. We're going to have a full 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Availability for our call agents. And on Saturday, and then we'll have 7 to 6, our normal hours through the week. And then the following Saturday, we're going to keep those hours extended from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. as well, so that we have a full week of extended call center hours for our claimants, just who might have questions or want someone to walk them through how they might use some of the new features in that first week after the launch. You can go to the next slide. And so that's it. And as I mentioned, my assistant secretary, deputy assistant secretary are available for questions, as well as myself. And the following slides after this question page are just the resources that I mentioned, all of the FAQs and the tutorials and the videos. I just wanted your members to have access to all of those resources that we continue to add to and message our claimants about and make available on our website, because we have heard some kind of like looking up a YouTube video and having someone show you how to do it. We do know that those tutorials have provided a lot of assistance to our customers. And so with that, we would be happy to take any questions you may have.
Okay.
So I see Senator Kramer has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Am I unmuted at this point?
You are.
Great, thank you. Madam Secretary, thank you. I know this has been an overwhelming and very challenging time for you. I also know you are limited by the resources that you've been provided. So I guess my question is, in addition to this new online system that seems hopefully will be user-friendly and intuitive, because I know a lot of the feedback and complaints I've been getting is that the current system is not necessarily user-friendly. What are you going to have in the way of additional human resources to address what, and God bless you, I hope this thing goes as smoothly as possible, but I also suspect that there will be glitches. And what additional human assets are you going to have? Because I mean, I still have constituents who have said, I need to talk to a human being. I can't get it done online. And, you know, this could go back weeks. I just took a look. I've got, you know, folks still from July and August on my list. And I'm guessing for a lot of these folks, a couple of minutes with a human and the issues could be resolved. So that's the first question. The second one is, what is going to happen with experience ratings for the businesses? You know, my concern is that, you know, if their experience ratings go up due to the pandemic, no fault of their own, that's going to be adding an additional burden to already stressed businesses. So those are the two things, if you'd be so kind. to address, please. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Senator, for those questions. I'll address the first part, and I might request some assistance from Dana Freeman on the experience rating side. But we have worked on both of these issues. And I will tell you that to your first question about capacity, we are in a very different place than we were back in April because we have augmented our staff with those 275 additional call center agents and an additional 100 state employees. In addition to that, we continue to augment our staff, particularly one of the issues you mentioned was complex issues that take time to be resolved and someone needs to talk to a person. That sounds like a claim that is likely in that pending bucket needing resolution by one of our adjudication specialists. We actually are in the final stages of an RFP to augment our adjudication staff. We are looking to hire at least 50 additional, essentially legal assistants to come in and help us with that backlog of the claims that are waiting for interviews. We are no longer just going by our old method of scheduling interviews between claimants and employers to resolve some of those complex issues. We are cold calling. Our adjudication team kind of goes through their schedule for the day and then goes down the list. And many of those people that have interviews are getting calls ahead of schedule to try and get those claims resolved faster. That being said, we need more people to do that work still. And we are in the process of hiring those people, and the type of agents that we are hiring to step in and do that adjudication work will be able to be trained quickly to, with kind of a checklist and a script of this is exactly what needs to happen so that those claims can get resolved much more quickly. In terms of, and you also asked about just kind of comparing to the last launch. I will tell you that not only do we have more time during this offline period to ensure the data transfer works correctly, to test once the system will actually come back on live for our internal staff before it goes live for our claimants and employers. So we will have time to identify if there are any major problems. We have our vendor with commitment of additional staff waiting to handle any minor issues that can be handled during that time frame. We also have a commitment from Microsoft, who we, as you may have remember me talking about back in April, our hosting services are handled for the portal through Microsoft Azure. So in a cloud-based system, we have requested extra servers to be made available, and for high-level executives at Microsoft to be made available to us. We were actually emailing with them this morning during this offline period and before we go live on Sunday morning, Saturday night. That is all added safety nets that we have had more time to plan for than we did back in April. So we believe we're in a good place, and we believe we have put all the right safety nets in place in terms of having the resources and capacity to launch such a large system. That being said, as you mentioned, it is a major IT project, and we would be remiss if we did not say that there is always a chance of some type of glitch, which is also why we have all of our staff, the vendor staff, Microsoft executives, kind of on hand and promised to be available to us to handle anything that comes our way. It's also why we have extra call center hours in the first full week, so that the planned enhanced user experience can be effectuaed, and actually, we can communicate that and walk people through it if we need to. In terms of the experience rating for employers, we certainly have looked at lots of different options of ways, and the governor has directly asked us to figure out how we may help employers to make sure that they don't get penalized for any situation with employees being laid off due to no fault of their own. Maryland's law is a little bit complex, and our law calculates the experience rating over a 3-year period. So for any negative credit of an experience rating or of a charge from an employee being laid off for this period, it goes into a larger 3-year calculation. So it's a smaller piece than some states where it's only calculated each year. And it makes it a little bit harder for our department to have the authority to change that. However, we have been in communication with Senator Klausmeier and Senator Hershey, and they might like to talk about it themselves, but there are certainly some additional legislative options in place, and we have committed our department to be supportive and to help do anything we can to effectuate what.
Madam Secretary,
Sure.
there are a number of hands raised, and so I understood that you had limited time, even yourself. I want to make a couple of quick comments, then I'm going to call on Senator Riley. I'm starting now in our district to find businesses that have now closed. And in some cases, the owner of the business decided to retire and they're moving out of state. So I won't say more, but you can see what that might create even by the time your Beacon 2 system is up. And with your continuation of the bi-weekly, of the weekly recertifications, we've got a problem. But more than that, we've got people who are now without secure housing. They are living in shelters. I've got some people who've called us and they have moved to 2 or 3 different shelters by now. So they no longer have transportation. The governor is cutting the mass transit, which is going to make that even more problematic. And they don't have any longer the ability to pay a cell phone bill or to even have a landline. So I'm wondering if, in addition to all the good stuff you're doing with your Beacon 2.0, if you thought about some limited resources for people who are in such dire circumstances, they could really use a Dropbox like the ones we're talking about in a paper form for the elections coming up. So that's just one thing that I would ask you to think about, as well as if we could move to bi-weekly recertification, then your staff could really get even a lot more done. You don't have to answer it all now, but those are situations you might not be thinking of. You clearly are making the system that you have better from everything that you're describing, but there's some people left out of that system and they are in dire circumstances. So if you think about that, I'm going to call on Senator Riley.
Is he muted? Muted?
How am I doing now? I'm
Yes,
We hear you.
good. Madam Secretary, thank you for being with us. Quick question. There was a news article written about the number of dropped calls because people were on hold too long. I have 3 quick questions. That's my first one. Would you kindly comment on the problem of dropped calls?
Sure, there's a little bit of a miscommunication about what type of dropped calls they were referring to. We believe what our wait times are down to under 15 minutes. That's a lot better than where we started. That being said, and we have expanded our call or the number of call lines we have available. That being said, what claimants get understandably upset about is the fact that under federal law, we are required to essentially make them listen to certain statements. You know, when you're in an online system, they can read through them and certify that they read these disclosures. When you're on an IVR, an interactive voice response system, you have to take a few minutes to essentially read certain disclosures to them, particularly things that were added by the federal government that are required by COVID. So claimants understandably get frustrated because they listen to a few minutes worth of disclosures and statements that are required. And then if all the trunk lines are full in our system, they will be told, please call back at another time. And the phone hangs up. Those are the direct calls that we believe the article was referring to. I don't have the number in front of me as to exactly how many of those are happening at this point every day. It is drastically reduced from the time when we started. And we are working with our, IVR vendor to see how many additional calls that will happen. The only thing I will also say is this new system, we hope, will alleviate the need for many people, many of the questions they call and ask, they will now be able to self-serve and get the answers to regarding claim status and eligibility in the system. It's
Thank
probably
you for
a
that.
perfect answer.
On the second issue, you have a 4% unresolved. Tell us, what does that mean in real people? How many numbers of unresolved cases are you aware of?
That number is right, averaging at about 30,000 claimants. But as I mentioned in the very beginning, that includes the 11 or 12,000 brand new claims from the prior week. This week, it was 13,000 new claims. So as I mentioned, we must wait 8 days for an employer to respond. It's an insurance program. When new claims are coming into our system, we will always have a pending number of claims in process. It's the nature of an unemployment insurance program.
That's fine. So let's ask a very targeted question on those 30,000. How many of them are from March, April, and May? Unresolved from March, April, and May.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I don't believe we had less than 1% from March and April. That was over a month ago.
Which is still about 8,000 people.
That was a month ago. I don't have the up-to-date data in front of me right now. I will also mention that sometimes we have a claim that is filed in March. Issues are resolved, they are paid, and then they call us, and remember, they certify every single week, and we determine eligibility every week. A new issue might arise on that claim 3 months into their extended benefits. And oftentimes they present that issue as having filed back in March, even though they've been paid for many weeks. I only mention that because it happens quite often. We have a claim that's filed, issues are resolved, they're paid, and then a new issue arises that we have to go through the process again to resolve.
I would encourage your staff to try to identify every single claim that has not been resolved in some manner since March, April, and May, because my staff has a list of them that we keep sending to your office. If a senior member of your staff does not respond to one of our inquiries, what is our recourse?
Are you saying that there are claims that we have not responded to from March and April? Because I don't understand that.
No, this is a new issue. My staff is sending very technical, difficult cases to your senior staff, and they're not responding. What should we do with this case? Or several cases, as a matter of fact.
Well, certainly, I think all of you have my direct contact information, but our legislative director, Andrew Fulginiti, has helped us set up a process for legislators whereby we compile through your staff's offices on a weekly basis all the claims that are coming through your office. And then we have a communication process back and forth with your staff. That would be the best way to communicate that to us.
Since you brought Andrew's name up, he's part of the problem. He's not been responding. What do I do with the case? Send it to you?
You are welcome to send it to me. I know that Andrew has been extremely responsive to most legislators.
He's overwhelmed and he does a great job at times, but we have some issues that are falling through the cracks. Thank you for your direct answer, and thank you for being with us.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Before we go to some of the blue hands, Delegate Arentz had asked me early on and said he had a question.
Thank you. I appreciate the time. Thank you, Madam Secretary. We've listened to this. We've been on several conference calls with you, and I appreciate the information. 2 questions, and one isn't necessarily about what you're talking about. One comes to businesses that are approaching me. When we look at all the funds that we're paying out in unemployment insurance and all that, do you have any future feeling on how this is all going to be handled as we move forward to the businesses and how those funds are going to be replenished?
I wish I had a crystal ball. I can tell you, I think I've mentioned it before, that we have asked in writing and verbally to the federal delegation for their help and we have written a letter directly to USDOL asking them to make grants available to state in unemployment insurance programs and not loans. Currently, they are offering loans that are interest-free through December 31st. So we asked for either interest-free loans for a much longer period of time or grants, because as we mentioned earlier, much of what has happened in terms of with employers is due to no fault of their own. And we would love for the federal government to step in and replenish trust funds so that both the experience rating and the tax rate are not so negatively affected.
But I understand a lot of that, but I think a lot of this is coming from, we have chosen as a state government to select different areas, different businesses that can stay in businesses. And my businesses over here, we're primarily retail, we're restaurants, we're sales, marketing, whatever. Those people are now paying a tremendous amount of money out of their tills to do this while their businesses are still paying the same amount. And I guess my concern comes in is we're going to go to the federal government and understanding that this is all taxpayer money, no matter where we get it from. I just wondered why we're opening and closing and keep businesses moving forward. Are you all having a discussion with the governor on what businesses and how to move forward and how to open up quicker?
Well, certainly, lots of those discussions are happening every single day. I was in a room yesterday with the governor and with Secretary Schultz from the Department of Commerce, talking about how we know that there is a need for additional capacity for businesses to be able to make the profits they need to stay open. And we are constantly evaluating, working with stakeholders and business groups to figure out what the best way to move forward is. I also wish I had the numbers right in front of me, but it is an enormous amount of funding that has already been provided from our state CARES Act money and also through the federal government PPP to businesses in Maryland. So we hope that has been helpful. To Senator Kennedy's point earlier, we used some of the CARES Act money for eviction prevention and for additional food services at DHS. So we know businesses are obviously equally as prioritized as our claimants, and we're watching both sides of this very carefully to make sure that we support the entire state of Maryland.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. And next I see Delegate Charkoudian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here and for your presentation. And I guess I want to follow up on some of Senator Riley's questions. I have broader questions that are really around data. I'm concerned that the picture that you seem to have and the picture that's presented in interviews with the Post and others just doesn't seem to match the picture that we're hearing from constituents. And so I just wonder if there's information, it would be useful to know how many dropped calls. I know you don't have that, but if you're able to come back to us with that, how long people wait on hold, if you can get that information, as well as
that's less than 15 minutes.
So when you were saying earlier that they have to listen to a number of prompts, you're saying they listen to those prompts and then there's 15 minutes after that, and then they're on the, then someone picks up. Or is it an average of 15 minutes? Like, is it possible some people get 1 minute and other people get 5 hours?
I believe it's on average less than 15 minutes. The reason for, it's a different type of drop. In my opinion, it's not the same as what you would think of as a dropped call. They get a message that says, please call back later. The reason is for that is otherwise they would have to sit on hold because there are no lines available.
Yeah, well, but from the perspective of someone who's desperate, someone who may have limited minutes on their phone, someone who's desperately trying to figure out a way to pay their rent this month, it sort of is irrelevant, I think, whether it's a dropped call in the sense that it was lost or you intentionally dropped them, which is what it sounds like the strategy is, to sort of intentionally cut people off at a certain point. So I think, and maybe you would want to let people know up front that they're going to be dropped so that if they have limited minutes on their phone, and, you know, again, we're talking about folks who are, you know, barely surviving on the income that's coming in. So to have them spend 15 minutes and then find out that was a wasted 15 minutes is an added burden to them.
Sure. It was a 1-800 number though.
Okay. So minutes on their phone. Okay. So the adjudication process, again, I think we'd like to see that data. It sounds like you're aware that there's a problem there and that's why you're hiring 50 additional people. I'm just wondering, why did it take so long to hire those 50 additional people, since that's really been a problem since March and April? So
we have been staffing up since day one, and the initial need was in our call center. I have to tell you, many states shut down their call centers altogether, either completely or for a period of time during this pandemic. And we have never considered doing that. But it has not been easy with this type of, honestly, it's impossible volume to handle for a state agency who is funded on a resource justification model. So to remind you what that means, USDOL funds our Division of Unemployment Insurance and every division across the country based on the volume of claims we receive. So yes, our staffing had been reduced drastically over the past decade. So in a matter of 2 weeks, we received a 5,000% increase in volume. I know that many of you are business owners and have managed programs before, and you must understand how difficult it is to ramp up immediately to handle that kind of volume increase. We targeted the initial need was the need for call center agents. We immediately also started hiring state employees and using them where we needed them. We have retrained the call center agents to now be able to handle claims all the way through. So some of them are actually doing some of that adjudication, but most of our adjudicators have been doing this work for 15, 20, 30 years. It's a complex process, and some of them have legal backgrounds. So we know that hiring legal assistants to do adjudication is completely different. And honestly, in the beginning, when we were standing up all of the CARES Act programs, the focus was more, the problem was not adjudication. We had zero backlog in adjudication back in early March. The problem was standing up the CARES Act programs, handling and processing claims for PUA, self-employed and independent contractors who had never been eligible for before in the history of the program, and training staff what documents to look at to get those people processed quickly. So now we have transitioned into a different problem with so much ongoing claim volume. We realized that there started to be a backlog in the timeline for interviews back and forth with employers. And once we started to realize throughout the summer, once businesses started getting shut down, that businesses weren't as responsive. So that presented that backlog. And now we are hiring the legal assistants. And as I mentioned earlier, we are at the very end of that RFP. So we anticipate having those people on board and trained in the coming weeks.
Yeah. So I think we've known for quite a while that there's a backlog in adjudication. I mean, we've been advocating for people who are in adjudication since July, one of whom just recently, once the Post picked up her story, finally got it resolved. It's not clear that my office would have been able to get it resolved had the Post not picked up her story, although we worked really hard on it since July. So this has really been an issue for a while. And I think the difficulty is that recognize the challenge within your agency, but the challenge for the individual human beings and families that are calling us on a daily basis is a survival challenge at this point. And so, it's hard to say, we're working on it, we're hiring people, other states are doing worse, because for them, it's how are they going to make it through the next week? I just want to ask one last question that's related to the Beacon 2.0. There's been a number of us who have been advocating for a while for an ability for employers to do batch reporting, to be able to report a number of people let go at one time and all that information to streamline that process. A number of us have been advocating for a link to healthcare coverage information, so people find out right away as they file their unemployment information how to get healthcare coverage. Information about income tax being taken out of UI at the point that people are filing. I'll just leave it at that. There's a couple of things we've been advocating for that we were told couldn't be done with the other system. Are those things going to be able to be done with the Beacon 2.0?
Certainly, some of those will be accessible to our claimants. If they have delegated to have taxes taken out, they will be able to see all of that in their portal. I think we have responded before about the health insurance side of things, and that would require approval by our federal partner. That type of request has previously been denied because they are very specific about unemployment insurance data being used only for unemployment insurance and using any federal funds to pay for a state program. That being said, we have offered to put reminders and resources on our website, if that might help. If I can back up for a minute, I wanted to respond to your comment about your office working through the media and trying to get claims addressed.
We didn't work through the media. I just want to be clear, we didn't work through the media. That our constituent was interviewed by the media, and that's the point at which the resolution came, as opposed to our office. Our office was working
Understood.
on it directly with Andrew, didn't get resolved. When the media got involved, that's when it got resolved. And that's the frustration for us, because we're not going to the media with with trying to get claims resolved. We're trying to go through this process, and it's not working for far too many of our constituents.
Sure. Well, I will just remind you that we are dealing with volume that has never been seen in the history of the program. I will tell you what happens when legislators, we do have this process, and it is working. I understand that some of you have claimants that you feel like haven't been resolved. I will tell you that some claims are much more difficult to resolve than others, and some take multiple interviews and multiple team members, because one claim can have multiple issues that relates to different aspects of the claim. So not every claim is able to be resolved in one phone call, even if we could put someone on the phone with someone same day. But when the Post or when another media outlet interviews a claimant and that comes back to us, obviously we have no choice but to try and elevate and get someone in touch with that claimant to figure out what's going on right away. But what happens when we do that is another claimant who has been waiting in line in undergoing the process gets delayed, because we only have capacity to handle so much, and we have a process. So that's the only reason we've set up the spreadsheet process with legislators. We're having weekly calls with your members and with your staff to answer questions on a weekly basis. And yes, we respond to the media on those very specific claims when we must, but we also remind them continuously that it's really important that we follow the process, because we do have a lot of claimants that have been waiting patiently for answers, and our agents are working through those lists of claims on a daily basis. Every single one of them is working more than 8 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Delegate Adams, you're next. And you need to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And Secretary, thank you for being here. I have a simple question. Senator Kramer and Delegate Ahrens touched on it when they were talking about experience ratings and how we go about, funding the UI Trust Fund. But my question is very specific. And what's your opinion of the solvency of the UI Trust Fund? You mentioned something about federal grants and perhaps future mechanisms to keep things solvent. But I'm just curious what your thoughts are as we sit here today about the UI Trust Fund. Years past, I've been with the committee for 6 years, Economic Matters, and occasionally UI will come in, and a source of pride is the condition of our trust fund. So that's the basis for my question, and just curious, where we stand here today, what your feelings are on that. Thank you.
Sure. I would tell you that I don't think any labor director across the country is feeling, great about where our trust fund stands. But that being because we've been hit by a pandemic that couldn't have been predicted. That being said, we do have a balance as of September 16th in our trust fund of almost $185 million. We are looking and talking to federal partners about the potential of needing to borrow those interest-free monies that they have offered. I would love to give the opportunity to my Assistant Secretary, Dana Freeman, who's much more of an expert in solvency, to share any insight that I may have missed.
Certainly. Is she on the chat, or is she on? There she
Hi,
is.
good afternoon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. With regard to solvency and our trust fund, I think we are in about the 7th month of the pandemic, and we are at 185 million. So when this pandemic started, our trust fund was pretty strong. In terms of solvency, that's a term of art for being able to get interest-free loans from the federal government. And Maryland, at the start of the pandemic, was not considered to be solvent. Even though we had a very strong trust fund balance, we would have to have borrowed from the feds and pay interest on it. Now with the CARES Act, there is the ability for states to borrow and augment and increase their trust funds interest-free through December 31st. And I know Congress is acting, and there's several requests to extend those interest-free loans through, I want to say next June of 2021, but we don't know what that will be. We are looking to see when and how much we will borrow. We have put all the paperwork into USDOL to let them know that when it's time to borrow, we have done all of the requisite paperwork, and you can borrow from the feds for 3 months at a time, and you get your funding within 3 or 4 days of that amount. Now, what's coming up for state of Maryland is that at the end of September is when we take a snapshot of the trust fund balance as compared to total taxable wages to see what table employers will be paying taxes from in 2021. So we don't have any information today for this committee on what table we'll be in. For the last 5 years, we've enjoyed being at the lowest table, table A. So whatever table that we do end up landing in, I'm pleased to say that most of our employers, about 55% of them, enjoy a great experience. This is all your tax rates are based on your experience, and they are always at the lowest end of any table that we're in. So from that standpoint, I would say that the majority of our employer base would be at the lowest end of whatever tax table we end up landing at. For an individual employer's tax rate calculation for 2021, as Secretary Robinson explained, we have a 3-year look back of benefit charges, and that cutoff was June 30, 2020. And really the pandemic started, let's say end of March. So you've got April, May, and June, 3 months out of the 36-month period where if you were paying benefits, getting benefit charges, that would be the impact of the pandemic for the 2021 rate. I know, so I would say that Secretary Robinson is put in a lot of requests and working with our federal delegation to see to what extent that we will borrow from the feds that could turn into a grant. And then the employers would enjoy the benefits of those loans turning into a grant. So, that's still up in the air. We don't know where that's going to settle.
Madam Vice Chair, can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, you may.
So one of the concerns I have is whether or not the Congress is going to act, or if there's going to be inaction, because it sounds like to me the quality of the UI Trust Fund for Maryland is predicated on, whether these grant dollars come through and or interest-free loans continue to be moved forward. So the question that sort of comes forward is, what happens if we don't get what you're hoping for from the federal government? I would imagine that's a fairly significant problem that's going to be hard to ignore. So how would we as a state deal with that if we don't get a good action from the federal government in this regard?
Well, we would have to replenish our trust fund to continue to pay benefits. And so the question is, will those funds be ultimately loans or grants? And so we're going to make sure the trust fund is funded to pay benefits. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Delegate Chi, then Delegate Wilson, Delegate Brooks, and Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Madam Secretary. I heard your presentation, and I wonder, since I'm about to send another newsletter to inform my constituents and give them some updates, I wonder what I can tell them in terms of our customer service promise as a government that feels their pain and that is doing the best we can to be responsive. I think it's one thing to say we have done the best we can. It's another to say this is what you can expect as an end user. So you mentioned a 15-minute is the max people can expect in terms of call wait time. At this point with the Beacon 2.0, should we even tell people to forget about calling and try to go online and download the mobile app whatever we can do to help you communicate, please be very clear and straight so we can tell people this is what we can, the promise we can keep. This is what you can expect, okay? Because there was one constituent, that was an extreme case. She actually on September 15th, which was 2 days ago. And if I remember correctly, that was like the day before you launched 2.0, called 117 times in the 3.5 hour window and never got through. And she actually sent us screenshots. That might be an extreme example, but I don't know how to get back to her and say, this is what you can expect now. Thank you.
Sure, and understood. I will just preface what I'm about to say with the fact that this has not been easy on myself or our department staff either. We pride ourselves on providing excellent customer service, and this type of volume makes doing that extremely difficult. And so when we have staff that are already working overtime and working weekends and then are still being criticized for not reaching enough claimants and not being able to answer enough calls, it's extremely difficult all around. Our hearts go out to every single one of these claimants that we know are, having a hard time in the worst financial situation of their life. And that's why we're doing everything in our power to staff up, to work extra hours, to launch this new system that will hopefully solve some of these problems while we continue to experience this high volume. In terms of what you can do, you're absolutely right. I would ask you to please communicate and encourage your claimants to download the mobile app, Maryland Unemployment for Claimants, and also to be prepared to sign into their account once it goes live next Sunday. Maybe not at 12:01, midnight. We don't want claimants. We always have a volume surge between midnight and 2 a.m. on Sundays. Claimants, for some reason, think that if they're first to get in and file their weekly certifications, they'll get paid faster. They can file anytime from Sunday through Saturday. But once they do file their weekly certifications, their payment gets processed in the next daily batch. So that being said, we hope that claimants will expect the full day Monday to have available to go in their system and check the online system. In terms of the 15-minute wait time, we'll have to wait and see if anything changes. There's a reason we're adding additional hours to our call center next week. We think claimants will have the ability to do more on their own in the system, but we also know it's new and we anticipate claimants wanting to call and speak to someone to guide them, to explain what some of the new features are. So please ask your claimants. We have already, I think, done much of that communicating for you, so they should know that the system is down right now. If you're sending out a newsletter today, I would remind them the system is offline. Claims agents right now cannot access the system either to resolve issues. So everything is on hold, and we're asking our claimants to be patient with us until Sunday so that we can provide to them a state-of-the-art system that they need with the new features that they need. And then I would ask for a little bit of patience in those first few days just to make sure they can understand how to file their weekly certs, whether through the mobile app or in the new system. That being said, nothing changes for them. They're going to log in with the same username, password, and hopefully have a much better user experience than they've had before.
Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Madam Secretary, thank you for the work you're doing. And I do appreciate that you guys are hopefully, understanding with this new system that you're going to put in place. Obviously, the technical difficulties that we always seem to have with any new system, which means we're still going to need those people in those boots on the ground to ensure that if those technical difficulties do arrive, or we just have individuals like our good Senator Cramer who are not that tech savvy, that we're able to still get them what they need to get. The questions I have, the first one I have is just a yes or no question. Can an individual basically receive unemployment benefits for more than one time in a single calendar year? Because what we're dealing with right now is individuals that may be getting rehired, but in October, depending on what happens with this pandemic, which we can predict may actually go bad, they get laid off again. And so my issue is around the holidays, I don't want these individuals not having any source of income because they've already collected one time. is, and that's kind of a yes or no answer, are they able to collect more than one time a year in this set of circumstances?
So there are very few yes or no answers in the world of unemployment insurance. I'm going to let Dana chime in, but I do want to emphasize that we're in a unique time frame when claimants have access to extended benefits. So they may be able to, depending on the time frame, come in and file for those extended weeks. But I'll let my assistant secretary give the expert answer on that one.
So that's what I was going to say. The answer is it depends. But if in your example, they went back to work before exhausting their regular unemployment insurance benefits, which they could collect for 26 weeks, and they subsequently get reemployed and then unemployed again, they could continue to go back and collect that 26 weeks to the extent they haven't collected it. If they've returned to work and had exhausted their regular UI benefits, but did not avail themselves of the pandemic extended unemployment insurance compensation, they could come back in and get, that's a 13-week additional benefit. And then if that person went back to work after receiving, let's say, regular and all of the 13-week PEUC and go back to work, and they get laid off again, they could come back in and get another 13 weeks of extended benefits, because we're in a period of high employment and we've been triggered on, if that claimant was receiving regular UI benefits. A little different story for those claimants receiving UA benefits.
Right. All right, and my second question, I'll just cut the rest off, I'll get them later, but I do have issues with some of the fraudulent claims that are being made. My worry is some individuals don't know that they're committing fraud. They're finding out they're getting a very large check because they either filled something out incorrectly. And then when they call, and I've had this happen to several constituents, they'll be pretty much being threatened with, criminal charges because somehow, by no intent of their own, they've committed a fraudulent act, or in other times they haven't committed fraud. It's just been a confusion. So when you guys are talking about the fraudulent claims, are you going by, bad faith methods, or you just, what is the standard that you're using when you define the fraudulent claims that you've been finding?
So let me explain that. So we are entrusted and are stewards of the trust fund to make sure claimants who are getting paid are supposed to be getting paid. And so to the extent we find out later that we did not pay the right claimant, then we've created what's called an overpayment for that claimant. Whether that overpayment is fraud or not turns on the length of time that person was collecting, whether that person was collecting at a time that they were receiving money from receiving wages, that's called drawing while working, or it could be this identity theft scenario that would be fraud. So we have overpayments in two different categories: non-fraud overpayments, and that could those overpayments could be created for non-fraud reasons, and then fraud overpayments. And so either one of those overpayments that were created, we have an obligation to go back and collect.
And that's where my issue comes in at. So when these individuals who by no fault of their own are over, given a $5,000 check, and clearly men are not good with money, it puts them in a very poor situation. Are you guys affording them any opportunities over time to make sure that they can rectify this without incurring further issues, criminal or otherwise?
So those claimants can appeal the overpayment determination that has been sent to them and have an appeals hearing. And then they could also ask for a waiver of that overpayment if it was, appropriately determined that they were overpaid. So they could seek a waiver.
And if there's any information you could send me on the standards that would be used for that, I would much appreciate it, because as an attorney, I would also be very interested in knowing for these individuals who did not, who got paid, unfortunately overpaid due to no fault of their own. That's my questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So although they don't have blue hands up, in order to keep things in the order that people have asked, we're going to go to Delegate Brooks and then Delegate Miller. Then we'll go back to the blue hands on the participants. So Delegate Brooks.
Secretary, for your presentation. Actually, Delegate Wilson just took my question.
But yeah, but that was my question. You know, I knew there was massive fraud initially being experienced by UI, you know, and my question was, how did you go about, what is that situation now? And then how did you go about collecting those ill-gotten funds? But I think that was, go ahead. I think that was just answered. So yeah. Yeah, the second part of my question, how does that impact those legitimate claims? Is that perhaps causing the time that you're spending trying to collect those ill-gotten funds? Is that impacting the legitimate UI claims?
You mean impacting the
The processing, yeah, the processing.
Okay, so we have a whole unit, it's called Benefit Payment Control, that also has adjudicators, but dedicated to overpayments. And they have been taxed with investigating tips and the like on fraud. And so they will investigate and make and determine whether or not a particular claimant was overpaid. And our adjudicators in the Benefit Payment Control Unit can also adjudicate in the benefits unit on the original eligibility determination and vice versa. So we are utilizing all of our resources to take care of all the different investigations that we have to do. An adjudicator makes an investigation on a claim, whether it's an overpayment related or an initial eligibility determination. So that's.
Oh, okay, and one other question on that. Are there any additional assessments being added on? Interest or penalties, anything like that? Overpayment.
Now you're gonna have me quote, you're gonna try and quote me, and I don't have my law book in front of me, but there is some penalties for a fraud claimant, that if that claimant does not pay back, you know, it accrues and you incur interest and penalties, but not for a regular overpayment. There's no.
Okay, thanks. Thanks very much.
Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary Robinson, I was listening to your earlier answers to Delegate Charkoudian and Senator Riley. I just wanted to follow up. In my experience and the experience of my staff, probably 95% of the people that come to us have struck out with dollar. They've filed claims and through no fault of their own, they either can't get the information they need or the file is claimed and they never receive a debit card. And on a weekly basis, we still get people who are very frustrated with this process. And one of the things I've noticed, we had to change from just sending emails to dollar when somebody contacted us to putting the information in a spreadsheet. But when dollar follows up with the individuals, we get the stuff back in a hodgepodge fashion. Our spreadsheets don't come back. It's just on an individual basis. And I've noticed that if I don't go to my staff person on, say, a bi-weekly basis and tell her to follow up with everybody that we've contacted dollar with, those people seem to fall through the cracks. And some get resolved, but some have been hanging out there for a while. And I have to go occasionally and say, can you send this back to dollar and see what's going on? And there still seems to be, I realize you need more staff, but I mean, as legislators, we're getting the people that are having the worst problems with the system. And we're trying to help dollar to get a resolution for them. And it seems like the information we're getting back, as overwhelmed as your staff is, isn't sufficient to help our constituents.
So we've been having weekly calls with members of the legislature and with their staff for almost 2 months now. And honestly, we haven't heard these complaints on any of those calls. We do hear that there are consistently, rare cases that are taking too long. Every single case is different, and some claims do take a long time to resolve with multiple new issues that arise each week. We, however, do send back the spreadsheets with notes as to whether someone has been resolved or paid. We send those back to legislators weekly So if for some reason your office is not getting that back and forth communication, we will certainly fix that problem. I'm going to give you, I hear where you're coming from, and we will continue to work to do better. In fact, we are in the process of also kind of behind the scenes launching a new Salesforce CRM, customer relations management system, with an email tracker that will give every single claimant internally in our system, and we'll be able to share it through the spreadsheet system with you and other legislators to show the tracking of every single one of our agents that has spoken to the claimant, every time we have emailed back and forth, if they're coming from your office or from another delegate's office. We do believe that's going to help. We know that some things are falling through the cracks, honestly, because some claimants contact you and 20 other legislators and the media and the governor's office, and they're already working with 3 of our agents. So that has been problematic. We continuously work to improve that process. And I think Salesforce email CRM system will help. I do just want to point out, because I understand that claimants that are reaching out to you oftentimes feel the most desperate, or are worried that they haven't heard something back from our team who might be working through the process. That being said, I do want to just remind all of you that there are 2 sides to every claim, and we can't share private claimants' information. And just in the past week, we have experienced, I'm going to give you just a couple examples, that one delegate sent, to be quite honest, a very nasty email to myself and to my staff, claiming that someone should lose their job because we had not resolved an issue for a claimant who had called a multitude of times. And I can't share the specific details of that claimant's information, but what I will share is that the particular claimant happened to be incarcerated, and they are not eligible for benefits if they're incarcerated. So we confirmed all of that and made sure we were correct and provided the feedback that we were able to provide back to the delegate. We received another high-level elevated claimant complaint that came from multiple legislators, and it was escalated and elevated on multiple spreadsheets. And that claimant, we just discovered, has an active claim in another state. The claimant actually had filed claims in multiple states, but we in Maryland cannot pay a claim. They're ineligible if they're currently receiving benefits in another state. And yet many legislators were very upset that we weren't handling this claimant's issue and resolving their claim quickly. So those are just a couple examples from this week. And I only share that because those issues take our staff time away from serving the claimants that need our assistance so badly. And there are many of them, and I know many of them are probably coming through your office. So please feel free to reach out to me directly, and we could have a call with my legislative liaisons if you'd like, to improve the process for your office if it's not working as you think it should.
Okay, and just as a quick follow-up, I'm happy to call. I will note last week I sent both you and Michael Harrison forwarded an email about a claim that's been hanging out there for a couple weeks. And to date, I've gotten nothing back. So I will certainly put the list together of claims when we filed them to your office, and would appreciate, if you can't answer, you can't answer, but at least let us know somebody's looked into it.
Absolutely, will do that. And I apologize if I missed an email. My inbox fills up with hundreds and thousands of emails every single day as my email address has been posted on all social media. So I'm doing my very best, and I have staff trying to help me manage that. And we will just continue to do our best, and I will certainly reach out and follow up with you about that.
Thank you. Chair Kelly, I know that your hand and I deference wanted to give you.
Yeah, I just want to say there are other senators here. I can't tell if their hands are raised or not. I know that Vice Chair Feldman is on, Senator Augustine and Senator Benson. So if you could look for raised hands there.
Okay, I will. I don't see any other, I don't see their hands, but I'll be happy to keep track.
Okay.
Delegate Watson, you're next.
Yes, thank you. Secretary, I have two quick questions. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The first is you mentioned in a follow-up to Delegate Wilson, you talked about the various different kinds of benefits and whether someone would be eligible again if they had a second episode. How does that work for PUA, or is PUA limited to a certain period of time and that's it?
No, any claim that comes in has, once they've exhausted their first period of time, they're eligible for the PEUC, which expires. Dana can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the end of the year. And then they're also eligible for the additional extended benefits, which have been triggered because of our rate of unemployment in the state. Dana, did I get that right? Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
I was going to tweak it a little bit for PUA. So the PUA program allows those recipients to receive those funds for 39 weeks. And so those PUA recipients don't get PEUC. But if we trigger on to EB, which we are, those PUA claimants get an additional 7 weeks of PUA benefits due to our triggering on to extended benefits. If a PUA claimant, I guess, went back to engaging in their business and then had to disengage in their business, they would have to have done that for 10 of those COVID-19 reasons to be eligible for PUA.
Right.
Okay, so that would be, it's not an automatic, you get back on it, but you would have to apply.
Right. So they could have a total of 46 weeks if
Yeah.
they never were able to go back.
Correct.
Okay, my second question is really just something for you to keep in mind, Secretary, about, I was listening to the conversation about the 15-minute wait time.
Mhm.
And even though the number might be an 800 number, it still counts against the minutes of someone's cell phone plan. And many, 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 many of our constituents are not on unlimited minutes. And so if there is a way that you can advise people when they initially call, they're not going to get through in the 15 minutes and to hang up and call back or something, you'd be saving those people a lot of money on their cell phone plans.
Thank you for that comment. That's something we will absolutely look into. We are already in the process of kind of evaluating the IVR system in light of the new Beacon 2.0 launch to figure out if our volume changes and if there are ways we can adjust and manage that better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Carey is next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary Robinson, thank you for being here. The presentation that we had today was Beacon 2.0. So I guess the first question I want to ask is, how's the launch of Beacon 2.0 going? I mean, it's been about a day now. So are we on schedule? You know, we've talked about this, and you know, you're migrating from a legacy system to this new cloud-based system. So how's it going 24 hours in?
It's going well. Thank you for asking. We are in the initial stages. So the official, you mentioned we've launched, the official launch is scheduled for midnight, Saturday night, Sunday morning. We are in the offline period of time doing our data transfers. The system went down at 5 o'clock Friday yesterday, so we could complete our batch processing. And today and tomorrow, our vendor and our IT folks are doing the hard work of transferring that data. So far, so good. We are getting updates often and regularly. So there have been no issues and things are running smoothly at this point. And as I mentioned earlier, we did plan in enough time so that on Saturday, the plan is to turn the system on for our internal staff so that we can actually ensure that all the data has migrated and things are working as they should be before we turn it on and officially launch at midnight, Saturday night, Sunday morning for our claimants.
So once you officially launch and issues, I mean, you're going to keep us kind of updated on what's going on so that we're aware of any issues. And I would hope that you have a plan in place already that if you have problems with the system's launch, that you'll have enough people at the call center to take the calls, that you'll be able to have help desk there for people who are trying to navigate this new system. And I guess my other concern is the employers are coming the next day. Do they know what they have to do and how they have to work in this new system? Have they had, I guess, any experience? I would assume it would have been through Beacon One.
So employers didn't have accounts at all in the Beacon One Stop portal. So this is all very new for them. The difference for them is that they are not in the system every day like claimants are. They don't have a need to be. But when we request something of them, they'll have access to go into the system and respond to us, as opposed to trying to call or email or mail us a document. So that's a huge benefit for them. They'll also be able to see their tax information and file appeals, make payments, those kinds of things. So we're not nearly as worried right at this point in time about the employers, because we know that claimants are going to be the ones wanting to go in Sunday to file their weekly certification. And we need to ensure that it's going to be a user-friendly experience for them on that day. That's why we are monitoring everything very closely. You asked if we have I think what you were asking is do we have messaging and or a backup plan? And yes, yes, and yes. We have learned our lessons from the launch back in April, when we had to very quickly, within a matter of days and weeks, procure, program, and stand up a system for the CARES Act programs. This is very different. This has been in the works for a long time. As I mentioned in the beginning, the launch of this modernized system was originally planned for June, but the pandemic hit. And all of our resources got diverted, and we could never have been prepared for the volume that we saw. So that's why it has been delayed, and we're doing it now because our claimants need it more than ever before. But on Saturday, during the time when the system is on for our staff and our vendor is, we're walking through, doing training, making sure all the data is correct and we can access everything that we need to access, and making sure it's ready for our customers. That would be the time frame before that midnight mark. We will make the the go, no go decision. If for any reason anything looks off and not perfect for our customers, we have a messaging plan in place, and you will of course be the first to know that we might delay for a couple hours or a day to make sure it's right. But we'll be in touch with you along the way, and you'll be getting messaging as well if, before we launch or if anything comes up that changes that plan.
Okay, and my last question, it goes back to what I believe Delegate Adams was talking about, was the solvency of the fund. And you had said that we're going to take care of the fund one way or another. And I guess my question is, so what does that mean? Does that mean we're going to take care of it on the backs of the employers? Are we going to use CARES funding, or is the general fund going to have to pay for this? I mean, how is that? I mean, how are we going to take care of it one way or another?
Well, I think what Dana meant when she said that was that we are going to ensure there are funds in our trust fund available for the program to pay benefits to claimants. We're not going to leave claimants in Maryland hanging with a trust fund that is left empty. If we need to borrow those funds, that's what we're going to do. We are working with an economist and a consultant to make sure we do exactly what is right to the benefit of our employers in Maryland. And so we're monitoring our balance every day, talking with our federal partners, talking with our counterparts across the country. I'm sure many states have already borrowed these funds from the federal government. We are thankful we have not needed to do that at this point. If we need to do that, and in the worst case scenario, the federal government does not act in extending the interest-free period or in providing grants to states to cover that money into our trust fund, then we'll deal with that in the next phase in terms of what happens with the tax rate assigned by USDOL to our employers. We'll work with you if there's anything we can do legislatively. I think all options are on the table at that point.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Madam Secretary, you have been wonderful. We have 3 more delegates with questions, and then with that, I think we'll be able to close. Delegate Rogers, you are next, and then I have Delegate Crosby and Delegate Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Madam Secretary. I really appreciate you taking the time to appear here today. So I guess my question's sort of along the lines of what Senator Riley started with and then Delegate Miller followed up with. But with respect to responsiveness and being able to get the list back in a timely manner and the accuracy of the responses that we're getting. But from a solution standpoint, have you considered the opportunity of perhaps, I guess, empowering some of those on our staff to help our constituents by giving us access to certain elements of the system so that we can kind of help you? I mean, because I know some of the staff sort of feel like right now that they're, in essence, an extended call center. And I think that perhaps those that, wish to take additional initiative and wanted that, if you provided them a certain level of access, that might help mitigate, some of the challenges that you're having with responsiveness.
Thank you for that offer, Delegate Rogers. I will tell you that I have, on many of the calls with your staff, I have in fact shared my appreciation, because I do know that they are kind of an extended arm of our office right now. When customers can't get to us, they are calling your offices, which is why we put this process in place so that we could collect information and get responses back to you on the claimants that are working through you. That being said, I would love to give all of your staff access to handle these claims. There are problems with that Dana might be able to provide some insight on. I know that certain functions of the unemployment insurance program can only be accessed by a Penn State employee. So that presents some problems. There's obviously confidentiality and privacy concerns with providing access to the system where they would be able to see all claimants' information. Dana, you have been the expert in federal and state unemployment insurance for longer than I. So if there's anything I'm missing as to why that might be difficult, please weigh in, because we all do know that we would welcome the assistance.
Well, I do. I welcome the assistance too, and I want to bring as many UI professionals in as possible. But there are some confidentiality things and ethicals and agreements that need to be signed, and training for someone to have access into the UI systems to protect PII, personal identifiable information. And so we can't grant, routine access to people to help us without having all those I's dotted and T's crossed. And we would have to give your staff some good training, because if we let them come in, like you put your toe in the water, but not enough, and they see, oh, I see the claim, but they still can't assist the constituent, that constituent gets mad, because they can't go in and do the adjudication or resolve the issue. They can just tell them, yes, it's in there pending. Now, we are banking on and counting on, we're not looking in the rear view mirror, we're looking through the windshield now with this Beacon 2.0 and all of the claimant maintenance portal will give that claimant a sense for the status of their claim, whether an issue's been detected, where it is, whether they got the employer's information in. And these are the type of questions that your constituents are asking and wanting to know. And we are banking on this Beacon 2.0 and the self-service and along with our customer service extenders like the mobile app to get your customers assisted. But I will look into it just to make sure there's any way you could have some read-only access to give them the status, but I don't think there'll be a need for that when Beacon 2.0 goes live.
Well, hopefully that'll be the case. And I just think that, it would be helpful if you did look at it, because you do have a lot of staff members who are, don't really want to feel like an offsite call center that's sort of kind of stuck in the middle. And they are state government employees and do have a lot of access to forms of PI in various capacities. And so, I mean, if we're going to go out and hire all these additional people, that's fine if you need to do that. But if you have potential extenders that are right there in front of you that want to help you, help us, help our constituents, it just would seem that you would look at what types of things that you can do to allow them to be able to do certain things to help. But I appreciate the response.
All right, thank you. Delegate Crosby.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Secretary Robinson. I don't want to beat up on it too much, but I do, echo Delegate Rogers' point of you do have another pool of state employees available, and I know that my own staff, I would be happy to have him train and help you process claims. Additionally, I think one thing that I would just like to see is some sort of acknowledgement when we send in or follow the process. So similar to Delegate Miller, I've sent probably 5 or 6 emails, 2 to yourself, Secretary Robinson, about one specific claim that I'm having, and I still haven't heard anything back. And I just want to know, like, hey, you actually got it and somebody is working it. Because right now it feels as if nobody has even heard me or, is taking my constituents' problem serious. And I recognize that you're all working overtime, but some of these people aren't able to eat or pay their mortgage, which I would argue is, a lot worse. And then second, just kind of going back to what Delegate Watson and Charkoudian said on the 800 number, I think a quick way to rectify that system, if you call almost any bank, you can just leave your number and then the bank will call you back and they still have you in a certain queue. So, if next up is, whoever caller 5, they can just leave their number. And when it's caller 5 slot, the system automatically dials them and then they can pick back up and you're not wasting minutes. Thank you.
Delegate Crosby, I just wanted to clarify that when our live agent queue is full, we offer the courtesy callback pigeon.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and then finally, Delegate Howard, who was called in. Although I can't see him. Delegate Howard, can you hear us? There he is. Delegate Howard, you're next. All right, I don't know how to get him on unless staff does. So unless we can find Delegate Howard, Senator Feldman for Finance, do you have any final questions or words of wisdom for us? Senator Feldman still here? I can't see.
Yes, Madam Vice Chair, this is Senator Feldman.
And Counter Vice Chair, how are you?
Correct. You did a great job. I don't have anything further to add on behalf of the Senate Finance Committee. It's probably time to adjourn. That's what I think.
All right. Oh, wait, we may have Delegate Howard, who has been waiting patiently. So Delegate Howard, if you're there and have a question, please go ahead.
I am here, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you, Secretary Robinson. Just real quick to circle back around to Delegate Wilson's question about waivers on fraudulent claims. I have to believe that a large portion of any fraudulent claims are made by mistake, and I just want you to touch on, if you can, how many fraudulent claims you've received and how many are being investigated and how many are being closed due to a waiver, and in what time frame, because I want to ensure that this is that part of the portion of the process is as less intrusive as possible.
Sure, I'll start off and let Dana weigh in if I miss anything. I will be honest, I don't have the number of waivers at my fingertips right now. I would assume that's something we would have to look into and get back to you on. But I can give you some updates on fraud. As Dana mentioned, we have 2 different buckets of fraud, the kind of the non-fraud overpayments that we deal with ongoing since the inception of the program. And then we have the fraudulent overpayments, which is kind of what we discovered back on the weekend of July 4th, when we found that we had 48,000 claims in our system that were stemming from identity theft. That's the update that I can give you right now. Out of those 48,000 claims that were discovered back in July, I can tell you that 95% of those claims were completed their review and determined to actually be fraudulent. So that was important for us. We recently completed the investigation on our end of that document review. We had a little over 4,000 of those claimants upload verifying documentation once we asked for that. So the remainder of them did not upload documentation. Which means we assumed that they were criminals taking advantage of the system. However, of those 46, a little bit over 4,000 that uploaded documentation, 54% of those people the documents were reviewed and they were determined to be legitimate claims and they were reinstated and paid. But 45.8% of those that uploaded that documentation were continued to be denied and found fraudulent. So the reason that's important is because we saw claimants taking the time to upload documentation. We saw passports with movie stars' pictures on them. We saw fake social security cards, that you can print on online. We saw all kinds of documentation uploaded, and what we realized, and in working with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Inspector General as well, some of these claimants believed that if they just uploaded something, we would check a box and move on and reinstate, pay the claim. That's not what we were doing. And that kind of re-emphasized the need on our team's basis for that intensive manual review. We added 16 people to that group that is reviewing those documents that are being uploaded, primarily because we're happy to be finished with that initial review. We are still in touch weekly with the U.S. Attorney's Office and with the Inspector General, and we certainly hope that there will be indictments and prosecutions made very soon. We know that they are, making some findings, and they can't share all of that information with us at this time. But we communicate them, and we are providing data to them regularly in a secure pathway to make sure that they have all the information they need to prosecute those criminals. However, since that July 4th weekend, when we detected those 48,000 claims, we put measures and triggers in place to ensure that any claim that came in, I wish I could share with you what all the triggers are, but if I did that, I would be sharing that information with anyone trying to take advantage of the system, so I can't do that. But if certain triggers are hit as the claim is filed now, it is flagged as potentially fraudulent, and claimants are asked to upload verifying documentation. So we do have groups. We have, since that time frame, we have found over an additional 90,000 out-of-state claims and over 50,000 in-state additional claims that have been flagged as potentially fraudulent. Of those out-of-state claims, 91% have not, when asked to upload documentation, have not uploaded the documentation, which assumes them to be fraudulent. The ones that have uploaded documentation, we have that group of people that is going through trying to verify. Of the in-state claims, 63% of those did not upload any documentation, so they are assumed to be fraudulent. For remaining claims, we do have that team. We continue to add to that team and train extra people so that we can go through and reinstate any legitimate claims as quickly as possible. But for the benefit of our taxpayers, that process is necessary to make sure that we're paying benefits to claimants that need and deserve it.
That's absolutely. Thank you very much.
Sure. Right. And with that, Secretary Robinson, as well as Assistant Secretary Freeman and Assistant Secretary Moore, thank you very much for your presentation today and for your candid answers to our long list of questions. We appreciate your time, and thank you for being here. And with that, unless Senate Finance has anything further, I think we can adjourn.
Nothing further, Madam Chair.
All right. So with that, thank everyone for your time and stay safe. Thank you very much. I think we can leave.
Thank you.